Tired?
Sort of. So this next season, what can you spoil for us?
I think you know, if you watch the season finale, that the child Hope has had to have been given away, and there's a clear threat in New Orleans. The werewolves seem to have made an alliance with the witches, and now the vampire community has been completely decimated. So we had a total reversal of the world of New Orleans that we saw in the pilot, where Marcel was in control of this vampire community and they held the witches in subjugation and the werewolves were exiled. It's been completely reversed. And now Klaus and Elijah have to pick up the pieces and decide what's next. And Haley is mourning the fact that she had to give away her child and the fact that she is now no longer a werewolf. She is a werewolf-vampire hybrid. So what does this mean for our heroes who have to stand up not only to Francesca, but also to the witches and to Davina, who's in control of Michael, the vampire who hunts vampires, and also the realization that this girl Cassie, the final harvest girl to be resurrected, is in fact their mother, Esther. And she has come back with a definite agenda, and it won't be long before we know what that is. And clearly she brought back with her a son, someone who referred to her as mother, and we know from mythology that Esther had 3 sons who died: Heinrich, Finn, and Cole. So who is that brother who's returned, and what's going to happen, and we're going to play with all of that stuff.
It's a lot to pack into one season.
It is a lot to pack into one season. I think this is the season where if in the first season they were dealing with uniting as a family and taking control of the French Quarter and providing for their child to be born, for Hope to be born, this is the season where they have to deal with the return of some very angry family members who don't want what is in their best interest. And how do you cope with people who've known you for 1,000 years, know all of your flaws, can judge you and criticize you and really cut you to the bone with what your fundamental psychological character flaws are? There's no one who can devastate you as much as your mother. There's no one who can point out what a failure you are than your father. Especially because Michael kind of made Klaus into who he is, and Esther kind of made Klaus who he is, and Elijah, and Rebecca for that matter. So it really is about dealing with the return of your parents. It's a very personal season.
Is it darker?
I think that as dark as the first season was, when they killed Thierry was Marcel's friend. If they're going to kill the people who are trying to destroy them this season, it's the equivalent of having to kill your own father, having to kill your own mother, having to kill your own brother. So I think in that sense, it is like the most aggressive and dangerous, fraught with emotion, Eugene O'Neill type play that you can imagine. I mean, it really is kind of going to become a Shakespearean tragedy in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Can you talk about new characters? We heard that Caleb was coming on. Do you have more than him?
Yeah, there's a character named Caleb who's going to be a big part of season 2, and we're going to see right away that he is going to have a connection with Davina, and it might start to become more than platonic type of connection, and he might try to guide her in a way and ask her to explore what it means to be a witch and why she has been manipulated. And as someone who's been manipulated himself, Caleb will say, if you have enough power, you don't ever have to be manipulated again. So join me and we can have, our own say in what's going to go on in the French Quarter. And that is going to be very difficult for Marcel, who thinks of Davina as kind of like a daughter figure, and he's going to see her get involved with this dangerous character, and we won't know, does Caleb have the best interests for Davina, or is he out for himself? So those are all things that we're going to play, and it's really going to allow us to explore Davina's character.
Nice. More than Caleb, though, or is he the only main?
More new characters?
Yeah.
There's going to be a character named Vincent, who is also a witch, and who's going to be, have a very strong stance on what should happen in the French Quarter. And, the witches kind of got basically abused and enslaved to an extent in season 1, and Vince is going to make sure that that never happens again. So he will be a thorn in our hero's side. And I think we're also going to see new members of both the vampire community, so who are going to be Marcel's right-hand men. Josh is going to continue to play a big part in Marcel's vampire community as he kind of resurrects the notion of vampires in New Orleans. We're also going to see a character named Aiden, who's going to be one of the werewolves, a guy who has a ring, who's powerful, but is not just a gangster, not just a monster. He is anti-vampire, but he absolutely has the best interests of his pack in mind. And so does that make him a hero, or does that make him a guy who's just on the other side of our protagonists, the originals? So that's just a few of the names that we're gonna see.
Is there a character that, based on fan reaction in season 1, is going to see a little more action in season 2?
Fan reaction, I think, that's a good question. I think we really want all of our characters to have journeys over the course of the season. I think Haley had an explosive last 5 episodes of the season. Phoebe was amazing throughout the season, but we knew that once she started to get involved with her werewolf family, and once she started to try to be a leader to them, that was going to take on a life of its own. And now she was killed and reborn as a hybrid. So that connection to her people is gone. They look at her as just another vampire. So now she can't be a queen to them, and yet she still cares about them and she wants to help them. So, how do you help a group of people that doesn't care about you and won't listen to you anymore? So Haley will definitely have some really exciting stuff coming forward. I think Cammie's going to have a great journey coming up as well. Right away, Cammie, in order to get her PhD in psychology, is going to have to undergo some therapy on her own. Like, she will go from being the therapist to Klaus to being in therapy, and she will have to talk about everything that she went through in the first season. And she's basically going to come to a point where she realizes, if I had just gotten involved in what was going on in the French Quarter, I could have stopped Francesca Guerrera from taking control. I might have been able to save that baby. And so in the same way Peter Parker says, God, I could have saved my Uncle Ben if I had just gotten involved. Cammie is going to feel a sense of responsibility to what happened in the French Quarter, and she's really going to step up and try to, make a difference and stop people from dying and be involved in the French Quarter politics. So, yeah.
Perfect.
We'll end it there. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.